After a few months away, the GP4 OC News makes its welcome return for series number 9, meaning that we are one series away from a decade's worth of series. On top of this is the second time the new series will be covering the fantasy era, and if you thought 2021 was exciting enough, the changes coming for 2022 in terms of car physics and the new engine manufacturer should make things even more interesting. The 2022 sign-ups officially closed this past Saturday, meaning no more drivers can enter and no one can edit their choices. So whilst we wait for the first official news to break next week, let's take a look at what we know already, along with the latest rumours to dominate the paddock. The first thing that we know, and something that we alluded to earlier on, is the fact that there will be a new engine manufacturer on the grid in 2022, courtesy of BMW, who will be returning to the top class for the first time since 2009 when they partnered with Sauber to become the BMW manufacturer team. Back then, the series was using V8 engines. However, in 2022, it will be the first time the German manufacturer will be developing a V6 turbocharged hybrid. They will be partnering with McLaren in 2022, with the team being officially known next year as the BMW McLaren F1 team, which will be a partnership similar to the one McLaren had with Honda from 2015 to 2017 and the one they had with Mercedes from 2006 to 2009. McLaren as a result will be splitting with Renault at the end of the 2021 season after only 3 seasons with the French manufacturer, and will be hoping the partnership with BMW will be similar to the one they had with Mercedes rather than the one they had with Honda. As a result of BMW entering, it will mean there will be 6 engine manufacturers on the grid, as they will be joining Mercedes, Ferrari, Honda, Renault and Lamborghini as manufacturers who are developing engines in the top class. It will be interesting to see how BMW does in their first season back. On the topic of engines, McLaren are not the only team to be switching engine suppliers next season, as when the 2022 sign-up opened, it was revealed that Williams will be splitting up with Mercedes at the end of the 2021 season after 8 seasons using the German manufacturer, and will be officially switching to Lamborghini engines from 2022. The switch to Lambo engines will make them the first team outside of the Lamborghini F1 team to be supplied by the Italian manufacturer in GP4 OC. Lamborghini's impressive rookie season in the top class caught the attention of Williams, which led to them becoming their first customer team. Williams will be hoping the switch to Lamborghini engines will move them further up the grid in 2022, and it will be interesting to see if any other teams follow suit in the future. The third thing we know is the fact that the car physics for 2022 will slightly change, with changes aimed at 2 specific things. Firstly, the cars will become a little bit more draggy in 2022 with the hope of increasing more slipstream, which should lead to more overtakes. And secondly, the rear tyre grip on the cars will be slightly reduced with the aim of making them a little bit more lively on the rear, which should in turn lead to the cars being a little bit more prone to oversteer. Top Class host Yuri has indicated there could be subtle changes to the car physics for future seasons to try and freshen up the series a little bit every season in order to not make the cars too stale and predictable. The final thing we know about is the 2022 provisional calendar for the Top Class, which got revealed this past Sunday. It will once again feature 21 races just like the previous 6 seasons including this one, but it has come with some major changes. The first change is the position on the calendar for the Korean and Portuguese Grand Prix. In 2021, the Portuguese Grand Prix hosted Round 5 and the Korean Grand Prix is scheduled to host Round 15. However, in 2022, Korea has been pushed forward to become the 3rd race of the season after the Chinese Grand Prix, whilst the Portuguese Grand Prix has been pushed back to round 14 and in turn will become the final European race of the season. However, the biggest changes that people would have noticed is the fact that the Monaco and Brazilian Grand Prix are not on the calendar, with Brazil being the most surprising one and have been replaced by 2 new venues. Monaco has been removed from the calendar as a result of having its cornerstone status removed and will only be allowed to return to the top class in the future if there is a workable and raceable version of the current version. Meanwhile, Yuri has alluded that the Brazilian Grand Prix could make a return as early as 2023, however on this occasion due to the system he has which determines the calendar, it has been removed for at least 2022. This means as a result, Brazil will not host the top class finale for the first ever time, and the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix at the Yas Marina circuit will become the new final round. In terms of the 2 new venues, Mazzana will make its top class debut in 2022, hosting round 5 after successful track testing and successful races in DTM, and will revive the San Marino Grand Prix, making it the first San Marino Grand Prix since 2006 when it was at Imola. But the one that everyone is talking about is the first ever Argentine Grand Prix, which will host the penultimate round of the season. The Grand Prix will take place at the Autodromo Juan Manuel Fangio, named after the great man himself, and is located in the city of Baucas, which is in the province of Buenos Aires. After failed attempts at getting a race at the Autodromo Juan y Oscar Galvez in Buenos Aires, a test race at Balcarce was held and it turned out to be successful. And so finally, after many failed attempts, an Argentine Grand Prix will finally be on the top class calendar, meaning that Franco Lopez, provided providing he gets a seat, will finally have a home Grand Prix next season. It will be interesting to see how Mazzano and Balcarce do in their debut seasons. And they are all the things that we know about. So with those out of the way, let's look at this season's pick order and go through some of the rumours to dominate the paddock. For starters, here is the pick order for this year's silly season. Before the silly season began, there was a rule change to the pick order which stated that if there were any drivers that signed up who had never competed in any series available in GP4 OC before, they would not be counted towards the pick order. There were a lot of ties in this season's pick order which, as per usual, were determined by the number of overall pricks, providing that they had competed in the OC in some capacity before. Haas had the most number 1 picks with 12, followed by Alfa Romeo and Aston Martin, who were both tied on 7. Williams were 4th with 5, followed by Renault, AlphaTauri, Ferrari and McLaren, who were all tied on 4. Then there was a 3-way tie at the bottom with Lamborghini, Red Bull and Mercedes all tied on 3. The pick order will also be posted on Discord later on tonight, but with that out of the way, let's get on with the rumours. According to Yuri, he believes that this year's silly season could be the most straightforward, with a total of 6 teams on a scale of likely to most likely being likely to retain their 2021 lineup into 2022. Too many likelies in that one sentence, I know. These teams being Mercedes with Franco Lopez and Amar Carr, McLaren with Kirishima De Rosa and Joseph Willows, although if one of them drops the ball, then FE champion and F2 championship contender Agatina Bavona and FE title contender Brandon Jackson could be there to capitalise. AlphaTauri with David Kupok and Miklos Gau, with many people believing at one stage that David would try and have a go at the vacant Red Bull seat, Ferrari with Chris Chatfield and Jake Galloway, Williams with Felix Sontag and Jamie Griffiths, although DTM title contender Mohamed Usman Hamid could be there to capitalise if Griffiths' performance starts to drop off, and Lamborghini with Rahul Patel and Laura Chung. The other 5 teams could/will be looking at least 1 or 2 changes in their lineup. We'll first look at the biggest one of them all, which is of course Red Bull. As we know by now, back at the Portuguese Grand Prix, it was announced that current championship leader Franco Gamba would be retiring from the top class at the end of the season, with him looking to move to another series. This as a result meant that there would be at least 1 vacant seat available at Red Bull for 2022, but the question here is who will be the one to replace him. As we alluded to earlier, before the silly season began, a lot of people believed that David Kupok would end up being a contender for that vacant Red Bull seat. However, in the end, he opted to put his current team AlphaTauri as his first choice. It is now believed that current Renault driver Evan Byrne is looking to be the favourite to replace Franco Gamba at the team next season, as a result the Irish driver announcing back at the Austrian Grand Prix that he would be leaving Renault at the end of the season after a frustrating 5 seasons with the French manufacturer. He has not put Renault at all in his choices, confirming that he will not be with the team next season. In terms of George Rowe, it is looking likely that he will remain with the team for another season, despite a shaky return to the team so far. Meanwhile, at Aston Martin, both of those seats could become interesting. Roland Motrin could remain at the team for another season, however, due to a few poor performances this season, he could get dropped. In terms of his teammate Julius Anderson, it's a completely different story, as it is looking likely that he will be leaving the team at the end of the season due to him putting another team down as his number 1 choice, with that team being behind Aston Martin in the pick order. In terms of who could be in the frame to replace Julius Anderson and potentially Roland Motrin, they range from 3 different candidates. They are the team's current test driver and 2020 GP2 champion Aaron Curtis, current F2 championship leader Tobias Kress, and current Alfa Romeo driver Andre Vaderi, who is looking likely to be leaving Alfa Romeo at the end of the season due to Alfa Romeo being ahead of Aston Martin in the pick order. It will be fascinating to see what the lineup will be at Aston Martin in 2022. Meanwhile at Renault, and as we established earlier, Evan Byrne will be leaving the team at the end of the season due to a frustrating few seasons with the team, meaning there will be at least 1 vacant seat at Renault next season, given it's looking more likely that Jesus Perinen will be retained by the team after an impressive rookie season in 2021. 2 drivers are more likely to be in the frame for the second Renault seat. These being current Alfa Romeo driver Roman Quag, who actually put Renault as his number 1 choice for the 2021 season, only to miss out to Jesus Perinen and end up at Alfa Romeo, and current Aston Martin driver Julius Anderson, who is more likely to leave the Silverstone-based team at the end of the season. Cue the memes, everyone. It will be interesting to see who Renault end up choosing to partner alongside Jesus Perinen should the Spaniard be retained. Moving on to Alfa Romeo, and it is highly likely that the Sauber-Ran Swiss team will end up with a new lineup in 2022, given that Roman Quag has put Renault as his number 1 choice, which is behind Alfa Romeo in the pick order, and the fact that Andre Vaderi has put Aston Martin as his first choice, which is also behind Alfa Romeo. A number of contenders could be in the frame for both of those Alfa Romeo seats. One of these contenders includes current Haas driver Amelia Wilson, who will be entering her final season in 2022 providing she gets a seat before her 2-season sabbatical, as it is looking more likely that she will not spend her final season with Haas, given that Haas are ahead of Alfa Romeo in the pick order. Other contenders include current F2 drivers Bent Valdinger, Alexander Arnold and Ruslan Proxiu, DTM driver and former Manor driver Maxim Titkov, and current FE driver Jake Tilsley. FE Championship contender Robert Ionescu could also be in the frame for an Alfa Romeo drive, however he has another team as his number one choice, which he is also a contender for. There is also another driver who could be in contention for Alfa Romeo if his number one choice fails, but we will get onto that later. The final team we will look at is Haas, who have the most number one picks with 12. Current Haas driver Daniel Fraser is looking likely to remain at the team for another season after what has been a much improved 2021 season for the Brit. However, as we alluded to earlier, it is looking more likely that he will once again have a new teammate, as it is looking more likely that Amelia Wilson will leave the team at the end of the season as a result of her putting Alfa Romeo down as her number one choice, which is behind Haas in the pick order. In terms of who could replace her at Haas, there are a number of contenders, which range from the team's current test driver Bartosz Klos, who is currently competing in World Champ Car for Team Penske, fellow World Champ Car driver Nicolas Zorbach, who is having a redemption season in 2021, current FE Championship contender Robert Ionescu, and the one which has raised many people's eyebrows, Florian Volker. Yes, the 5-time world champion could be making an unexpected return to the top class in 2021 after a brilliant season in the midfield Arrow McLaren SP. He also has Alfa Romeo as his second choice in case Haas doesn't work out for him. However, just like with Haas, he will have tough competition to overcome if he wants to return to the top class. It will be interesting to see which direction Haas end up going in. And they are all the rumours to dominate the paddock. And with that, that concludes the pilot episode for the GP4 OC News Series 9. The first team news of the season will break next week at the Belgian Grand Prix in Spa-Francorchamps. Who will be the first driver or drivers to be announced? Tune into Tuesday's practice session next week at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in Stavelot. Hello everybody and welcome to round 11 of the 2021 GP4 Offline Championship. We are here at the Hungaroring in Budapest for the Hungarian Grand Prix. I am JW97 and I am joined today by the man who is really Renault's nightmare, really. You haven't heard him for a while, it's Evan Byrne.
Hello, just want to remind you, screw Renault, but, always happy to be here. Just, more than happy to talk about the upcoming rumours, I guess.
As promised, he said he would make a few occasions during the second half of the season, especially when the silly season arrives, and he's stuck to that promise. So, we are here at the Hungaroring in Budapest, and as you can see, it's going to be a dry session, no rain expected. I just want to quickly double check if there are any test drivers. I don't think there is. There might be. Then again, I can't remember this. No test drivers. I just double checked that. So, no test drivers in this session. So, without further ado, let us get on with this. Well, obviously, as you would have seen in the news video, I think it's safe to say, Evan, and obviously Yuri, obviously this is according to Yuri, but I think it's on an opinion of most of us in the sign-up chat, could be probably one of the most straightforward silly seasons in quite a long time.
It is looking that way. In honesty, a good few seats are probably going to get retained pretty quickly. So it's just like the second half of the season, which is weird sense, I know, it's where things are starting to get interesting.
Indeed so, and usually during the second half of the season, I mean, a lot of people have alluded to that that's usually when George Rote usually kicks up a gear, but whether he will or not remains to be seen. Well, we'll speak on the topic of Red Bull because George Rote is looking likely to remain at the team for another season, and obviously you're rumoured into it, but so I'm not going to ask you too much about your rumoured to Red Bull situation there, but I'd rather ask on the situation of David Cupart, because it is safe to say a lot of people thought he would go for that seat before the sign-up started, but in the end he opted not to.
I mean, it's his call at the end of the day, so maybe he's playing the long game with sticking with Alpha Tower, or he's hoping that the long rumor takeover of the team happens. I mean, I don't know if that's going to freaking happen, but he's probably, I think he could be playing the long game here.
Could perhaps. He might be playing a similar game to what we believe Miklos Gau's potentially doing with AlphaTauri, of course, because obviously we initially thought last season when he put AlphaTauri as his first choice, we honestly thought initially, does he actually put that by mistake or does he mean that? But he did actually genuinely mean that. He did want to go to AlphaTauri, and I think same reason, really. He wants to play it out on the long game, really. Although, as we've seen this season, AlphaTauri, it's not really worked out for him in 2021. But obviously, we might as well talk about the Renault situation, of course, because with your departure from Renault, it obviously leaves at least one vacancy, because it's obviously looking likely Jesus is going to get retained. But in terms of who his teammate will be, who would you say is the favourite at this stage, would you say?
I know it's probably going to break his heart to hear this, but I honestly think that Romain Quagg is the favourite, and Julius might have made a big mistake here going for Renault number 1. It's just that Quagg has been on another level this season. Admittedly, to be honest, I was worried that he would sign up for Renault at Red Bull, and I'd have to fight him for the rest of the season. But in honesty, when you've got somebody who's been as good as Quagg has been this season, it'd be weird not to at least consider him.
Of course, let's not forget as well, Quagg did originally put Renault as his first choice. He was actually battling with Jesus last season to be obviously your teammate at the time, and obviously he just missed out because of the testing role that Jesus has and the fact that he finished in the required position he needed to get that Renault seat. But in the end, it might actually come full circle in the end for Quagg. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, Anderson will obviously try his best, because it's safe to say that even though it's argued that Quagg has had a better season, you could also say that Anderson's return has also been quite good.
Yeah, it's been good, and in fact, like, Julius has been very good for a number of seasons now, so that could actually bring him back into favour when it comes to Renault seat.
Perhaps, and who knows really what this second half could kick off, because usually when we say something happens, sometimes the opposite ends up happening. It ends up going in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
On to the Aston Martin situation, and well, obviously, if it is believed that Anderson will be leaving, and it probably looks like he will due to the pick order, unless we have a situation where we have to call him back on whatever. Hold that thought, because De Rosa's made a mistake as he crashed it in the wall, because he has hit the wall, and luckily no damage from there.
Yeah, just went in, carried a bit too much speed, got on exit, just then hit with a bit of oversteer.
Yeah, indeed, and we're having a look at that replay now. He actually got the oversteer just before, in fact, going through the left-hander, and then it just carried on into this fast right-hander here. But luckily for him, no damage sustained for De Rosa. Of course, last time out, if we're going to be on the topic of De Rosa, he actually got a podium last summer, although it was on a technicality because a really heartbreaking incident, it's fair to say, happened there.
I mean, to be honest, I thought it was kind of funny with everyone voting Franco Driver of the Day, but, you know, things kind of happen, so it's racing, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, Andre Videri was robbed of a possible podium, it's fair to say, his first ever podium in the top class, and as a result, he is still the only driver this season to not score a point. All the other 21 drivers around him have scored a point. He still needs to get off the point scoring mark, and we're now on round 11, and, well, just wonder when it's going to happen, really, because, I mean, guys, he's obviously, if we were going to be honest about Andre Videri this season, Evan, he hasn't really had the season compared to last season, it's fair to say. The last 2 seasons he was obviously good, but this season he just seems to be a little bit off the ball, it's fair to say.
Yeah, like, Silverstone was by far in a way his best race, but doesn't really undo the fact that for the rest of the season he has been quite far off the pace of Romain Quagg. It's almost like they're on 2 completely different spectrums of quality this season. Quagg has been arguably the best, but you could argue Videri's probably been the weakest on the grid so far.
Indeed, and obviously Videri will be looking to flip the switch on that in the second half of the season, but he will need to really put his foot down, because of course he is one of the drivers who is in contention for maybe one of the Aston Martin seats, because of course Roland Mottram does have a chance of still being retained, but it's not as easy as it seems.
No, Roland has been honestly quite anonymous this season. You'd be forgiven for not really remembering anything he's done so far. So he has a habit of going missing in races, and that kind of reflects in his chances right now. There are a good amount of good drivers going for the Aston Martin seat, so if Roland doesn't really pick up the pace anytime soon, he could start finding himself in danger.
Indeed, especially with the other 2 competitors going for the Aston Martin seat as well, those including the team's test driver Aaron Curtis and of course the current F2 Championship leader Tobias Kress. It will be fascinating to see who wins in that battle and whether or not Roland can actually retain his seat or not, because if he doesn't, then Aston Martin are looking like they're going to have a new lineup.
I do think that in the end Roland will still retain the seat. I just think that he's been consistently solid enough for the past season to get it. It's the other two where it gets kind of interesting, because Curtis is, remember, reigning Formula 2 champion. After kind of slow start to a season, he's kind of picking it up now, and he's starting to get into that title fight. So, if I were to hazard a guess at this very early stage, I do think it'll be Roland and Curtis next season.
This stage, of course, but as you
Yeah.
know, we've seen many times during this, things can change just like that, really. So it will be interesting to see what goes up in that Aston Martin battle. And on top of that as well, speaking of another battle, whilst it's a bit debatable whether or not it'll be 1 or 2 seats that will be switched up at Aston Martin, I think it's very clear to say that Alfa Romeo will be having a different lineup next season.
Yeah, that's kind of the way the wind is blowing, especially since both of their drivers right now are looking at leaving the team in some capacity. But at least for Alfa Romeo's sake, the talent who have been linked to that to fill in the void at that team, they look pretty good. Like, you're kind of spoiled for choice if you're Alpha.
Yes, you obviously have Amelia Wilson, but it would only be a 1-season deal, really, because, of course, she announced, of course, back at the Spanish Grand Prix that she'll be taking a 2-season sabbatical at the end of 2022. Well, that's the intention, of course. She wants it to be at the end of next season, but if she doesn't get a seat for 2022 for whatever reason, then she'll push it forward to 2021. So it'll be interesting to see, really, but it's very clear as well from her choices, Evan, if she does get a drive, it won't be with Haas.
Yeah, of course she did put Alfa Romeo as a number 1 choice. She very much intends to leave Haas at the end of the season. So that would make it 3 teams in 3 seasons for her, assuming she does get the seat. And when you kind of come over to the Haas situation, it's a weird one. Like, when you look at all the names that are attached to that seat, because in fairness, I think Daniel Fraser will be retained at some point this season. But it's the second seat where things start to get weird.
Indeed, of course. We'll go on to Haas now, in fact, because as you alluded to there, it is looking likely that Daniel Fraser will remain at the team for another season, because it is fair to say, compared to last season, he's had a much big improvement.
I mean, he has been keeping it out of the way of other drivers, to be fair. When he has been on the circuit, he has looked solid enough that I wouldn't be surprised if he was retained. But, of course, the way I think it's going, I think he will be returning near the back end of the season, so he just kind of has to keep it clean until then, and I think he'll get retained just fine.
Yep, but it's the other seat, of course, that could be interesting, as you alluded to, of course, because we believe that Wilson is going to leave, and of course that opens up a seat at Haas. I don't know where my tongue went there, or my throat went, but there we are. A free seat at Haas, and well, as we saw there, of course, on the news video, of course, Haas have the most number 1 picks, and there are a few, you'd say, solid contenders who could take that second seat.
It's a lot of solid contenders, but where it kind of throws a spanner into the works is that we do pay attention to, like, recent histories. And for all the guys competing in Haas, they're having a great season right now, but it's where their last 2, 3, even 4 seasons are going to start coming under scrutiny for when the time comes to make a decision on those seats.
That, of course, includes Florian Volker, because although he is a 5-time world champion, it's fair to say if you look at his last 3 seasons, they haven't exactly been the best. Of course, this season he's having a good season, because given the car he's in, he's actually performing quite well. But if you look at his previous 2 seasons, that could really hold him back.
It could hold him back, but what kind of goes in his favor is that the same can also be said for some of the people he is fighting against.
It's basically just trying to figure out who's had less bad seasons, I guess, in a way, and who just edges it out in the end as to who will be Daniel Fraser's team. But it will be interesting to see who Haas end up going with in the end.
Especially because a lot of the guys who are fighting for that seat are also in tiers where teams have different performances, so we kind of have to look at, okay, this guy is in the 7th quickest car on the grid, and he's like 8th in the championship, so how does that compare to like somebody who is in like the 2nd best car and 3rd in their championship?
Yeah, and that'll be something if you're comparing the likes of Zorbach and Volker, who are, of course, both in World Champ car. One's in arguably a top seat, that being Zorbach in the BMW, and the other one being Volker, who you could argue is in a mid seat. So
yeah,
that's where it kind of happens, really. And we did allude to this, of course, earlier in the season, that because obviously Formula E and World Champ car are not equal series anymore, unlike F2 and DTM, it does mean that we have to judge them differently.
Yeah, especially like Formula E is a bit easier because everything's split off into groups. Like there's 3 top teams, 4 midfield teams, and 3 back marker teams. and then with Champ Car, it's all just like first fastest to 11th slowest. But
Yeah.
overall, it should be like at least interesting when time comes to start making decisions on the seats.
Yes. We obviously alluded to the 5 teams who are looking like they're going to have at least 1 or 2 changes in the lineup. But in terms of the other 6 teams, which are of course, as I alluded to in the news video, Mercedes, McLaren, AlphaTauri, Ferrari, Williams, and Lamborghini. It is looking likely, unless a couple of teams as drivers start to drop the ball, that they're probably going to retain.
Yeah, like I know it's like the #1 joke in the community right now, but if Mercedes doesn't retain, I will be very much surprised.
Yeah, but obviously we will wait and see. I mean, if what happened last season happens, where they basically got announced on the first week, then if they don't get announced on the first week, then maybe something is wrong there. But we will see, of course.
I'm just if they don't get announced within like 3 weeks, I'm assuming somebody has done something very wrong to Yeri.
Yes. So anyway, yeah, I think it is looking likely. Now, of course, as mentioned, of course, I think it's very clear that Felix and Jamie, if they do get retained by Williams, they'll be hoping that they can move a little bit further up the grid. Now, of course, the trend dictates that obviously, if anybody didn't see, there was a trend, of course, which compared the 2021 cars to the 2022 cars in terms of whether or not they gain or decrease the performance, or in some cases keep neutral in terms of their performance. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to dictate where they are in the pick order, but it obviously gives them a comparison, really. But they'll be hoping with the Lambo engine, Evan, they can move a little bit further up the grid, because obviously they were hoping it was going to be the case this season, but it hasn't happened for them.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame for Williams, especially for Felix, because despite what he will inevitably tell you, he has been excellent this season. So it's probably a bit frustrating on his end to be putting in such great work, but not really getting rewarded in the end. But with moves to Lamborghini for next season, I think they might be able to pull up a bit more surprises, because Lamborghini could probably bring a very good engine to the field, so that could make them very much competitive on like tracks where free stops are better, or just high or low downforce tracks in general.
Yes, indeed, and it will be interesting to see if they can move forward, because of course Lamborghini have had a very impressive rookie season. Of course, they've obviously had a win and 2 pole positions, and who knows how far they can go forward. And now that they will be having a customer team next season in the form of Williams, it will be very interesting to see how that one goes for Lamborghini. And as I alluded to in the video, it'll be interesting to see if any other teams maybe follow suit in the future or not. Obviously, we know that McLaren is going with BMW next season, and they'll be hoping it goes in the way it did between 2006 and 2009 when they were Mercedes OEMs. But of course, they'll be hoping it doesn't go the same way as it did when they were Honda's OEM. So that could be someone, and I'm interested to see how the BMW program works out for McLaren. Moving away from the teams, of course, obviously we had the calendar revealed, obviously, this past Saturday, and obviously this is the first time that we've pretty much reacted to it live on the air, really, and obviously I've known about it since last week, of course. It's obviously the biggest takeaways from this, of course, and we were wondering this for a while. No Monaco Grand Prix, and I know for a lot of people, and I think you speak for a lot of people, Ivan, you're kind of relieved by that.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, Monaco was in case you're new here, Monaco is always kind of a bit of a nightmare to deal with. Yeah, the race would be incredibly chaotic, and you'd only have 5 or 4 cars finishing, especially the 2014 race where only 3 cars finished, and Julio Sanderson in a Caterham somehow got onto the podium. Or there would be like the Monaco of recent seasons where it's basically a procession where there would be like maybe 1 overtake if you're lucky all race. So it's probably for So it's probably just for the betterment of like just the league in general that as Lopez goes a bit wide there, he's able to keep it on the road just fine, but
a bit too hard there, it's fair to say. But yeah, obviously, as Yuri alluded to, it can return in the future, but only if the current version of Monaco, so the version that's used in real life, is raceable and isn't buggy. Because if you remember when we last raced a up-to-date version of Monaco, it was, if you thought that the bugginess that you saw in qualifying this season and the wet conditions was one thing,
got nothing.
They've got nothing compared to what happened like between, I don't know, well, 2014 is the best example I can give there.
Yeah.
Basically, to answer Rob's question, an OEM is basically a manufacturer team, basically. So from 2006 to 2009, McLaren were officially the Mercedes manufacturer team, because they were pretty much the ones who were dictating where the Mercedes engines were going, and it was kind of the same in 2015 when they brought Honda back. So that's basically what an OEM is, and obviously as a result, McLaren, because they're bringing in BMW, are essentially again going to be an OEM again. So that's what we mean by that. So that's that really. So anyway, what was I saying? Of course, going back to the topic of the calendar, of course, I think the biggest one that caught a lot of people by surprise is the fact that the Brazilian Grand Prix is not going to be there next season. Now, of course, that doesn't mean it's going to be gone forever, because Yuri hasn't ruled out it potentially returning in 2023. But I think it's safe to say, judging from the stream chat and Discord, it caught a lot of people by surprise.
I mean, it's kind of a surprise, but at the same time, it also isn't really. Because every track had an equal chance to get retained and get dropped, and unfortunately, Brazil was one of the tracks that did get dropped. I mean, if you want to have a joke about it, you could just blame it on that one guy in the signups who was going to every Brazilian signup saying how they should get into F1, and immediately after they close, Brazil is announced to be off the calendar. So But either way, it might just be for a season, or it might be longer. But either way, we can just chalk that up to in-universe renovations.
Yeah, indeed. And as a result of that, of course, Brazil, for the first ever time, will not host a finale, and the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix at the Yas Marina circuit will become the new final round. Rob mentioned to me about Abu Dhabi. As we speak right now, there isn't actually an up-to-date version of Abu Dhabi available on Grand Prix 4. It's only the previous version that's available on Grand Prix 4 at the moment. But I guess when an up-to-date version ends up arriving on Grand Prix 4 in the future, then obviously Yui would have to test it first, but I don't think it's out of the question. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be out of the question.
I mean, Abu Dhabi's been historically been a pretty good track for us. It kind of has the right mix of generally good racing, but also a bit of that chaos we kind of always look for. So honestly, I'm surprised it wasn't made the finale sooner.
It's basically to put it this way, it's basically the exact opposite of what it is in real life. Basically, yeah. GP4 can produce good races on it, whereas in real life they just seem to struggle with it. So.
In theatre series races are fun.
Yeah, they're usually fun in real life, but when you talk for F1, it just never really works, does it? I mean, fair enough. I think there was a slight improvement last season with the track, but I don't think we could tell too much because of the cars they were using. So, but that's just that, really. But anyway, on top of that as well, though, on the topic of the calendar, the one more thing, of course, the two new venues, Misano and Balcarce. Now, I think people would have realised I actually butchered the pronunciation of that when I mentioned it first time. I actually pronounced it as Balcarce. It's pronounced Balcarce. I actually double-checked from a few videos I was watching about the circuit a few times, and also on Google Translate. It is pronounced Balcarce, so just thought I'd mention that. But yes, two new venues. First of all, we'll talk about Misano. Obviously, familiar to people in the OC, of course, because DTM used to race there for a few seasons. The last time they raced there was, I think, the 2019 season.
Yuri, it might have been last season, actually. Because I remember, last season, there was, an excellent DTM race there.
It was actually Mugello that they raced that last season, and it was actually that was the track. In fact, it was actually this season. In fact, they had a pretty good race for Mugello. But yeah, they have raced at Misano and Patton DTM. Obviously, Yuri did some testing on it, and it worked fantastically. And it's fair to say, I think I'm definitely looking forward to seeing a race there, and especially, obviously, it's reviving the San Marino Grand Prix name for the first time since 2006. So it will be interesting to see how the races do around Misano, and as I said, can't wait to see what happens there next season.
It'll definitely be an improvement over the last San Marino Grand Prix we had. That's saying something.
I don't think it's too much of a. I don't think it's too hard to achieve that.
Just in case you are new here and you haven't caught up with the lore, San Marino 2006 is kind of regarded as probably the worst top class race of all time.
And a bit coincidental for my family, because that was the race that my brother took his first ever victory in the OC. So, yeah, unfortunate distinction there. And then he had to wait 3 more years to get his second win. So, anyway, but yeah, Misano arriving, and of course the one everybody is talking about, Balcarce. Obviously, it's more likely Lopez will be on the grid. I think it'd be too difficult for him not to be on the grid next season, but it looks like finally he's going to have a home race next season.
Finally, we were kind of predicting it to happen this season, but it's happening next season instead. But yeah, it'll be good for him. This, I only found out about the circuit when it got revealed for this calendar next season. I was wondering, what is this? But from screenshots you've posted in the Discord and the videos I've seen online, yeah, I really can't wait for this one.
I think See, I did a little test with it before I sent it over to Yuri to have a test with, and yeah, he was pretty surprised by it. And yeah, so finally we get an Argentine Grand Prix. Of course, you alluded to earlier that we've been trying to get an Argentine Grand Prix for a while. Of course, we were meant to have an Argentine Grand Prix this season. You may remember when we announced the replacement for the round 16 of 2020. Because it was originally, we were meant to be going to the Argentine Grand Prix this season at Buenos Aires, but due to failed track testing, it ended up going back to Malaysia again. But finally, after finding another track that seemed to work well...
Don't bring that up, please. Don't bring up Malaysia last season, please. Thank you.
Oh, I'm not. I'm just stating the circuit. But
please, just say redacted.
Moving. But yeah, anyway, either way, it's nice to finally have an Argentine Grand Prix on the calendar next season, and it will be interesting to see. Given it's the penultimate race of the season, who knows? Maybe it could be the race where the 2022 title gets decided. But
it would be a kind of a nightmare scenario if the title gets decided and it's like Armor wins the title.
Yeah. Well, if Lopez is winning the championship at that point and he's got a comfortable lead, imagine the scenes if he wins it at home. That would be something to witness there. But yeah, that's pretty much that. Of course, next season as well, we also have the car physics changes as well, which should have some more oversteer and a bit more slipstream as well. So hopefully the races should be a little bit more exciting from that aspect. And pretty much there, really. So we've talked a little bit too much about the news video, really. So we might as well also talk... Well, it's been a good chat because we've got 18 minutes left of the session. We might as well talk about stuff that happened at the last race of the British Grand Prix. I mean, we already alluded to it with Andre Fideo, but we might as well talk about it for all the rest of the grid. It's safe to say Franco Garma in the last race, Evan, totally dominant drive, and as a result, we took the lead in the Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, the moment he saw he was on a 3-stop and said, yeah, his race was ruined, he didn't know what was in store. Like, that was probably one of the most dominating drives I've seen in the OC in recent memory. Like, it just wasn't challenged at all.
Obviously, it's probably not the most dominant we've seen. It's one of. Obviously, the most dominant actually came at this track 2 seasons ago with Franco Lopez, as you may remember, when he lapped the entire field. Yeah. Probably the most dominant drive we've ever seen in the OC. Probably has to go to Franco Lopez on that occasion. But yeah, it was a totally dominant drive. Obviously, Garma didn't expect it, given he was on the free stop and given we were on the hard tyres at Silverstone. Of course, this week we're on the medium tyres, so it's kind of middle of the road. But yeah, a dominant drive for Garma, and obviously we took the lead in the championship. And I think it's fair to say, Evan, at the moment, of course, things could change in the second half of the season, but it is looking more likely that the championship could be between Garma and Carr this season.
Yeah, it is kind of looking that way. Like, Franco is, when he's on the track, he is consistently at the front, but he does have a habit of either just retiring for a weird reason, having a poor strategy, or just kind of going missing in that race. And while he's not reaching the heights as often, he's just a lot more consistent. Like, he's scoring points pretty much every possible chance he gets. I do have a sneaking suspicion that the title will be wrapped up before Brazil, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, anything's usually possible in the OC. When we think it's going in one direction, it usually ends up in the other direction. Hopefully it goes down to the wire, and hopefully it's very close at the end, because I think we would like to have a very good finale, especially given it will be the last time we'll be in Brazil for at least till now, because it could return in the future, as we alluded to. But
yeah, and we can always just put it on like another series' calendar.
But yeah, I mean, I alluded to it in the Discord chat. It's not out of the realms that F2 could still continue going there next season, given they've obviously got the voted track and wildcard system in that. So it is possible for Interlagos to appear on that still, but we'll obviously wait and see, really. But yeah, a dominant drive for Garma. Obviously, given the fact with the Mercedes, in fact, Carr, of course, obviously got second place after Lopez's penalty from the collision he had with Federi last time out. You mentioned, of course, Carr's been very consistent this season, and, well, it's been kind of a very interesting story for Mercedes this season. We expected the pack to possibly be a bit closer this season to the Mercedes, but it's fair to say, we've said it all season, really. They're qualifying. They've been very inconsistent, but there's been no denying that their race pace has been superb.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like, Mercedes is either off the pace in qualifying, or they just, like, pick very bad times to go out, because the amount of times Mercedes have been held up in traffic this season is kind of astounding, to be honest. But, like, you don't get points in qualifying, you get points in the races, and when the races do come, Mercedes are almost always, like, fighting for a podium or a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, so far this season, Carr has managed to win Is it? How many wins has he got this season? Is it 2 wins this season? Garmer's got 3, if I'm not mistaken. Because obviously we now know, of course, that Carr is the last Monaco Grand Prix winner now, as we know, having won it last 4 times. And obviously he won at the Chinese Grand Prix after that 4-way fight for the win towards the end of the race. So yeah, it could be that. But of course, I wouldn't. Obviously, they have got a bit of a gap to third and fourth in the championship, but at this stage, even though I've said that Gamba and Carr, it looks more like it'll be between those two, you can't ever rule out potentially Lopez and Jesus getting back into it.
Like Lopez, multi-time world champion, he's like been very good whenever he's got the car running. And Jesus works for Renault, so I just immediately no, he's not got a chance. But Lopez, like a freeway fight for a championship, could be interesting.
Yeah, well, you say that, but it's fair to say that Perillin's obviously had more good luck this season than what you've had, if we're being totally honest. And
I mean, he still works for Renault, so it's not really that much of a good comparison, so...
Well, you said that the Renault this season is basically what Ferrari are in real life, so...
I'm not wrong.
Well, so far they've been proving that I've lost a word I was going to say there, but anyway, rather than dwelling on it, moving on really. Obviously, we mentioned as well that De Rosa got a podium. Obviously, inherited the podium after what happened in front of him at the British Grand Prix, and he did kind of need it really, because this season for De Rosa, he's kind of had the look that Josie Willows had last season.
I do think that people outside of like who don't know what we know in the ratings, they can kind of overestimate De Rosa's downfall. He's been quietly pretty okay this season, nothing like too terrible. He does have a habit of just crashing at other cars sometimes, but overall, I think he's been okay enough. I do think people are kind of overestimating how bad his season is going.
Perhaps indeed, but as we alluded to in the sign-ups, it's probably unlikely he's going to get dropped by McLaren. So
no.
On that respect, it looks like he's probably done enough to stay with the team for another season, and he'll be hoping that, like with Joseph Willows, the BMW program works out for McLaren so that he can move further up the front in the future. As one of the Hasses there comes in the pitch, just in front of George Roque. Now, obviously, I saw a few times that George Roque... We'll go back to George Roque, really. I saw a few times, of course, during the stream chats throughout the course of the season that he feels like he's shot his chances of being retained at Red Bull. But as far as we're concerned, it's probably looking likely he's going to get retained.
Yeah, in all honesty, the competition out for Red Bull outside of the two people we know are very likely to get retained just isn't that strong. It does rely on a lot of people somehow missing a seat, but somehow getting in good enough ratings to get to Red Bull, which is incredibly unlikely, or just people who have kind of shot themselves in the foot with their sign-ups.
I guess as well at the same time he might have thought that, I guess he had that belief in his head, like a lot of people believe, that Q-Pop was possibly going to go for that seat as well. So maybe if Q-Pop did sign up, then who knows, maybe he could have had a point, but as we sit here right now...
If somebody in near Q-Pop's level this season had signed up for Red Bull, things would have gone very interesting. But I suppose for my own sake, thanks for not signing up.
Anyway, anyway, I was losing speech there. But anyway, so far then, just under 11.5 minutes to go. The top 3 currently separated by 89 thousandths of a second, and we are at a downforce track. And as we've seen in the past, Evan, with downforce tracks, this is usually where Ferrari usually come in their own, really, because of course they were strong in Spain. They showed some good pace in Monaco before the bad luck came about, and although it wasn't really much of a downforce track, it was kind of a half and half track at Paul Ricard. They showed some good pace there, so you'd imagine, given that this is a downforce track, you'd expect Ferrari to be strong here again.
Yeah, I do expect Ferrari to be strong here. I honestly, a dark horse to win might be Jake Galloway. It's just they cannot afford to get stuck in traffic tomorrow, because it's kind of been a running gag this season. But Ferrari, when they do get stuck behind someone, they just get stuck behind them for a while, or just punt them off the road entirely.
You could argue that could come down to the engine that's in the back, because it's fair to say, if you were comparing all the engines on the grid, they probably got one of the weakest on the grid.
Yeah, I mean, they did almost get away with running an illegal engine in 2019. But a lot of the bad fortune from last season was the fact that their engine was just so far behind everyone else's. It's a bit of a slow rebuilding process for them. So they are going to have to deal with the fact that their engine just won't be as good this season. So they have to make the most of these opportunities as they come.
Indeed, and tracks like this, they'll be able to take maximum advantage of this. Of course, given that so far they obviously need to try and extend that gap a little bit, because although they've got a comfortable margin in fourth position in the constructors, you never know. Lamborghini and McLaren could snap up back at them, because that battle for fourth could get quite interesting during the second half of the season.
I think it could very much extend to battle for third, actually. Like, I know we make a joke of it all the time, but Renault have been like slipping up constantly this season, so they are putting their own like third place in the championship under threat as teams like Ferrari, McLaren, and Lamborghini start, putting together consistent results, staying out of trouble. Like, I think the battle for third in the championship could actually get a bit interesting by the end of the season.
So you believe as a result that the top two have basically cleared off as a result of Renault's mishaps?
I think so, to be honest.
Enough. Obviously, it is very close at the moment in the Constructors' Championship between Mercedes and Red Bull. The gap only, 17 points between them going into this race.
Yeah.
Obviously, Red
the more
Bull
things change, the more they stay the same.
Obviously, the gap was sliced, of course, last time out at the British Grand Prix. So, who knows, really? And Yuri says sad because the Renault is very fast. He just said that. Yeah, they have been very fast this season, but it's just been making so many slip-ups.
Yeah, it's either reliability errors or strategic blunders. It's kind of frustrating when you're in there on the inside, but as an outside, it's probably hilarious.
Hence
why it is pretty much the 2022 Ferrari experience.
Hence why, of course, you're obviously leaving the team at the end of the season, and it's a bit ironic really that they've got yellow, given all the rumours that Ferrari could end up having a yellow car this weekend for the Italian Grand Prix, given they've been releasing yellow merch recently. So it's been it's a bit ironic there, really, or coincidental, because you keep on correcting me when I say ironic and coincidental. I have noticed that in the stream chat. It's just my way of saying stuff. Anyway, speaking of which, here is Evan Bird trying to have a look at one of the Williamses there. That nearly ended in disaster, and so far that Williams currently holding up a traffic jam, and this could be a thing also in qualifying as well, Evan, because it is quite a short track, is the Hungaroring, hence why it's 70 laps, and traffic could be a big thing during qualifying.
Yeah. Especially because qualifying is crucial at the circuit, because, a nightmare. So if you do get stuck in traffic more than once, you probably start being a bit worried about your chances.
Yes, indeed.
But at the same time, if you do qualify in the back end of the midfield or just the midfield in general, this track is kind of famous for turn one carnage. So.
Yes, indeed. So far, we haven't seen any of that during this practice session, and I'm probably going to jinx that as a result of me saying that. But yeah, so far we haven't seen any of that so far during this this practice session, and hopefully, because obviously last season I think we had 3 incidents there last season, if I'm not mistaken, down at that first corner, which is basically the maximum. Which is basically the maximum Yuri accepts, of course, before he has to make some changes.
I mean, Chris Chatfield did run to the back of a Renault at least 4 or 5 times at turn 1, and then took out the other Renault at turn 2, which is a bit much, but
That Renault, of course, I think ended up being his future teammate in the end, wasn't it? Jake Galloway, if I'm not mistaken.
It's funny how these things work out.
Yeah, it's it just like in real life. It's just funny how it plays out in the end. I mean, in real life, we could end up having a little bit of a karting rivalry happening in at Alpine next season. It could be all goes swings and roundabouts in this series. Anyway, Byrne has finally been able to find an improvement and has gone up into 4th position, so he's now slotted himself behind teammate Perinen at this point. We've still got Chris Chatfield at the top of the timing sheet. So 6 minutes to go. This is what the leaderboard currently looks like. It's Chatfield at the top with Garber in 2nd, and it is Perrin in 3rd, Byrne in 4th, followed by Lopez in 5th, De Rosa in 6th, then it is Galloway 7th, Willows in 8th, Roke in 9th, followed by Videri in 10th, then it is Quag in 11th, followed by Roland Motrin in 12th, Armarkar 13th, then Julius Anderson 14th, Daniel Fraser is in 15th, with Patel in 16th, then it is Chung 17th, Sontag 18th, Wilson 19th, Griffiths 20th, And then the two AlphaTauris with Gal 21st and Q-Pog in 22nd. So far, the Lamborghinis not having the best of sessions, all the way down in 16th and 17th at this point in time. And I might as well mention, whilst we're on stream, because I do have a little bit of announcement of my own. You may remember, of course, we've had Hungarian commentary for the last couple of seasons. Well, it is happening again this season. I just want to point that out. It will be happening at the same 3 races that we did last season. So Hungary, Italy, and, of course, the finale at Brazil. You'll be having a Hungarian commentary version of it because we do have... It turns out, because we did see the analytics at one point, we do have actually quite an audience from Hungary in the OC. So kind of makes sense to do that.
I mean, if I was a hazard guess, like our top 3 countries are probably like the UK, Brazil, Hungary, so
maybe Italy as well could be up there as well, because we do have a few Italians in the series as well. So, oh, here we go. We've got the crash at first corner. It's happened.
Yep. And as soon as you mentioned Hungary as well.
Yep. And this time it's involving, I think these are the 2 German drivers of Sontag and Q-Park. No, it's Gal, in fact. I do apologise. And let's have a look here. So we can see that the Aston Martin coming out of the pits, and well, Sontag just doing the typical turn 1 there. He's got damage to his front wing, and as a result, he's going to have to come back into the pits and repair that if he wants to do any more running. But first crash at turn 1.
Well, you have the Hungary special, as you mentioned. This kind of thing happens all the time. At least for the AlphaTauri guys, it happened right near the end of the session, so they're not losing too much time. But I mean, it's still frustrating to deal with. But hey, at least it's not like damaging their practice plans. They still probably have good enough data for qualifying.
Yeah, just going to answer a question here in the stream chat. Of course, that obviously means that is Gal's session over with. Of course, that's why we've got the screen pause, of course, so that Yuri can actually get the to ensure that Gal doesn't get back out onto the racetrack, because of course we've obviously had the spare car ban since the Chinese Grand Prix. Whilst that's happening, just want to answer a little question from Rob. Thoughts on the recently leaked 2023 provisional calendar? I presume you're talking about real life, because I'd be a bit worried if it was the OC. I haven't seen it. I've not seen it. I don't know if you've seen it recently, haven't I? I haven't seen it.
No, this is the first time I'm hearing about it.
Well, maybe something to check out during the break between practice and qualifying, I guess. I haven't seen it, Rob, so I can't really give an opinion at the moment. So... anyway, Yuri has managed to get that sorted with Gal there, and as a result, his session has come to an end, so he won't be allowed to return onto the circuit until qualifying. But anyway, we've got just under 3 3/4 minutes to go as Jesus Perinen now comes out onto the track, right in front of his teammate Evan Byrne. Of course, we now know that this will be the only time these two will be teammates, because we believe that Perinen's going to have he will have a new teammate, but obviously it's just a question of who's going to be the man who will partner alongside Perinen next season. Will it be the man that he prevented from getting a Renault seat for 2021 in the first place, Roman Quagga, or will it be the meme man himself, Julius Anderson?
I can't believe that's his legacy.
Yeah, because he actually just pointed it in the stream chat. I just want to point that out, because he pointed out the fact that I said cue the memes when I mentioned his name for Renault.
I don't know, man. Liam Bognick did put Renault number 1 in sign-ups. He has a chance. Been killing it in French F4 recently.
Interesting. Apparently, according to Rob, Spain is after Monaco, according to the league. Well, we'll check it out after this session. Like I said, I can't really give an opinion until I see it. Meanwhile, Gamba now goes to the top of the timing sheet. So 1 minute 15.311. So Chatfield's been at the top for quite a while, but now Gamba has eclipsed it now to go a tenth quicker than Chris Chatfield. So
yeah, I presume people now are probably doing like final preps for quality, start doing their low fuel laps.
Perhaps indeed, although the dev panel doesn't suggest that, of course. But I suggest
the dev panel isn't always accurate.
No, but what I've normally seen for qualifying, obviously the lap times are a little bit lower due to the low fuel. But I guess they're practicing on push laps, I guess. So, But anyway, 2 minutes to go, and I think we're going to ride on board with the drivers for the remainder of the session, judging from what we're looking at. Car, who's making a bit of a mistake there, through into the second last corner. Luckily kept it on the track there, and we've seen quite a lot of lockups and mistakes during this session, it's fair to say. So maybe an omen for qualifying when the mistake rate does get lifted a little bit more.
Yeah,
for that,
it is practice, so people are probably just trying to find the limits of the car, see what works, what doesn't.
Comes Roman Quag now then, as he just comes around the second to last corner. So far not on an improvement. Quag at the moment currently in 11th, just behind teammate Videri. So 10th and 11th so far for the two Alfa Romeo drivers. Not a bad session for them indeed. Across the line, and Quag does not improve, as Gamba behind doesn't improve, as he was getting held up by Roman Quag. And here comes David Kupok now then around the final turn in the AlphaTauri. Of course, the only AlphaTauri left in the session because of Gal's crash with Sontag earlier on. Kupok, no improvement, he stays where he is. Burn across the line, no improvement. He's exactly the devil's phone number down on Garma there.
Oh, hell yeah.
In that session. As here comes George Roke, who's up on his personal best, and he goes up to 4th, so a much better time there for Roke in this session. Griffiths, no improvement. Here comes Andre Videri across the line, no improvement for him either. Willows will get one more flying lap in before the session comes to a close. Amelia Wilson, across the line, she will go in the Haas, no improvement, she stays where she is, as her car is currently down on his personal best by 0.2 of a second. The Mercedes is currently in this session 6th and 13th, so Carr not having the best of sessions so far. In fact, he didn't have the greatest of qualifying sessions last time out at the British Grand Prix. Only qualified in 13th, but made it all the way up to 2nd. Again, proving how much good race pace Mercedes have this season. Carr across the line he goes, no improvement, he stays where he is. Meanwhile, Galloway up on his personal best, currently in 8th position. Where is Galloway going to place himself? Across the line, goes only 7th with that time, in fact, so not as high as I was kind of expecting there, given we're expecting Ferrari to be quite strong around here at Hungary, although Chatfield at the moment currently up in 2nd place. Here comes Garber, who's finally been able to get through on Roman Quag there, but he's not on an improvement and he stays where he is. Speaking of which, he doesn't improve. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Sometimes it'll be a bit slow this time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and the checker flag is out, and that's the end of the session. Chung was the last one to cross the line. She actually improved to go up into 9th position. So Chung, the last driver to cross the line. Roke is again up on his personal best, currently in 4th. Across the line he goes, and he stays in 4th, and but improves on his personal best. Anderson, no improvement, he stays in 15th. Here comes Chatfield in the Ferrari, no improvement, he stays where he is. Videri, no improvement for him, as he was holding up Willows there, who was on his one and only flying lap, of course. Wilson, across the line, she will go in the Haas, she remains where she is. As Carr, again, just probably getting some mileage in the car, because his laps seem to be getting worse than the previous one, so I guess he's just cooling it down for the moment and just getting himself prepared for qualifying, which will start in around, I would say, 8 minutes time, because obviously it's scheduled for court 2 on the thing. Obviously it depends on how quickly you can get things sorted out, but anyway, across the line he goes, no improvement, he stays where he is. Here comes Jake Galloway in the Ferrari. Across the line he will go, and he doesn't improve, stays in 7th. Sontag on his final flying lap crosses the line in the Williams, currently in 18th, and he stays in 18th. Gamba, the man currently at the top of the timing sheet, comes down the pit straight, and across the line he will go, and no improvement, he stays on a 1 minute 15.311. Patel across the line, no improvement, stays where he is. Fraser comes out of the final turn, he crosses the line, no improvement, stays where he is. Here comes Laura Chung, the last driver to cross the line. Chung crosses the line, no improvement, stays in life, and that's practice done with Gamba, Chatfield and Perrinin, your top 3. So overall, pretty interesting session, Evan.
Yeah, I mean, is still practice, and qualifying coming up next could be a bit chaotic considering all the traffic that could get in the way, and the fact that you only really get like 2 or 3 shots of putting in a lap. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Indeed. Well, we're just going to take a brief pause for the moment, and then we'll come back for a fresh stream to start the qualifying session. But in the meantime, I've been JW97, he's been Evan, and we'll see you in just a little bit. See you in a bit for qualifying.